Hello, everybody, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. I'm very glad you joined us here today. I am Hannah. I am the Chief Transparency Officer of Impact Hero, a Berlin-based impact tech for good company. And yeah, we basically started the company with the wish to, really enable companies to become a source of positive impact and include solutions and positive impact into their business model, which will enable to regenerate the world and make it a better and more just place. And this we do by enabling companies and also private people to basically sponsor or gift impact in the form of planted trees, corals grown, areas restored, or education sponsored, and many different other areas. And in that sense, really see companies as part of the solution and also as multipliers for positive impact. This, of course, also has this big angle of creating awareness for example, customers, for suppliers, for other stakeholders, employees, which companies actually gift impact to. And in that sense, really create awareness for the sustainable development goals and for the really, really big importance of collective action and everyone really being a part of this mission to regenerate the world and facilitating positive impact towards the SDGs. And really with our LinkedIn Live sessions, we want to raise awareness and do education in terms of the different impact areas that we as Impact Hero are active in. And yeah, the goal is really always to have an exchange. And if you have questions throughout the talk, please always also use the chat to ask them, and we will try to facilitate them. And yes, with that, I would like to talk about our today's session, which is kind of a special one because usually we rather speak to people that are more external, but today we speak to someone who is really, really internal to what we're doing. And as you know, we started to give a little background as Grow My Trees. So we started our whole idea of positive impact with a focus on reforestation and agroforestry activities, so really planting trees. And in that sense, the whole idea around reforestation and agroforestry was a really important one. And we as Impact Hero, of course, do not usually implement projects ourselves, but we work with really, really great project partners who actually do and supervise the tree planting activities in the ground for us. And in that sense, I would like to introduce our guest today, who is Khalifa Mganga. Khalifa is the executive director and head of planting at Forest Focus. He's an experienced forester and a certified forest garden specialist and studied at the University of Agriculture. Khalifa is born and raised in Korogwe in Tanzania, which is in the northeast, close to part of the Usambara Mountains, who I had the pleasure to visit twice last year and ask Khalifa a billion questions when I was there, because of course it's a little bit tough sometimes to understand what tree planting actually, how those activities really work. It sounds really abstract, but once you go there and you see the whole process, a lot of questions arise as well, but you slowly start understanding practically how things are working in the ground. And Khalifa Assad established Forest Focus, which is a forestry NGO in 2020 with the mission to really empower local communities and restore the Usambara Mountains, and is implementing agroforestry and reforestation projects in several different districts of Tanga and the Kilimanjaro regions. Welcome, Khalifa. Mambo. Very excited to have you here today. And maybe before we start talking, I would really love to know what was the moment when you decided to dedicate your time to sustainability?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah. I'm so excited to speak today in this event. Well, that was 7 years ago for the first time when I revisited my home village in Korogwe. And then, since I left in 2002 for further studies in other regions. So when I went back, that was, I remember, 7 years ago, and I found things very different at that place. And one of the changes, a few changes that I could see, a river stream that we used to swim when we were teenagers, that was not existing anymore. And there were abundant beds, and one of these types was finches, the goldfinches. I could not see any of these beds. And sad enough, one of the larger trees, that was Militia excelsa, I remember, it was used to host several events in my primary schools. That was, again, not there. So I just decided to take an initiative to find out what is the reason for all these, changes. At last, I came to realize that these are red flags, which means we are now losing almost every treasure that we inherited from the past because of how people are behaving nowadays, maybe a little bit due to climate change and stuff. So that's when I and a few age mates decided to sit down and do some research and see if we can restore some of these lost items, including the river, or maybe trying to restore the lost biodiversity, including the trees which are already cut down, and maybe in the later in the future restore even the lost birds and other animals which we used to see when we were young. That's when we came with a mod that insists people on planting native tree species along the rivers, along the remaining water sources, and also just to reforest the scratched parts of the natural forest which we used to enjoy in the past. And yet we have another problem, which is one of the causes for deforestation and some of these, unwise impacts, which is extreme poverty in most of the villages. Because in most of the villages, including my home village, you can clearly see how extreme poverty results into deforestation, because people do not have enough opportunities to make living. So what they depend upon are the existing natural forests to earn an income that they use to earn living. So they cut down trees for, let's say, charcoal and sometimes lumbering. So they do that just to get an income that they use to live. So the mod insists on, first of all, restoring what is already lost, but also providing these people with alternatives, clean ways which they can use to earn living. And this is only agroforestry, which they can do at the cheapest cost and achieve what they must achieve without destroying the ecosystems, or engaging into deforestation and other activities which are unhealthy. So in 2020 we registered an NGO which is by the name Forest Focus, and the purpose is to plant trees, to maintain what is existing, and also to plant agroforestry tree species to help farmers generate a clean income that will help them to stop these unwise activities of going to the forests or other reserved areas for either firewood or charcoal, which are traded to make life much easier. So that's how the journey started.
Super, thank you. Yeah, and I think what you already mentioned is, I mean, one of also the core pillars of how we like to choose projects at Impact Hero, that we always say we want to do something which is, of course, great for the environment, which is ecologically sustainable, but which always, of course, includes the social and economic component and empowers local communities, which is why it's so important to like have people like you on the ground who know what are actually the problems in the region and how you can work together with people to make these, to approach these topics differently. And maybe you already mentioned the combination of reforestation and agroforestry. I think maybe for some listeners it's not so clear. So basically there's this idea of reforesting large areas of land, which are then where native tree species are planted, but there's also the idea of involving existing farmers which can plant basically trees on their own agricultural land. Could you maybe, because of course tree planting, it always sounds quite abstract, or it's tough to imagine how work is actually doing, how the work is actually being done in the ground between the tree nurseries, the planting seasons, and how the agroforestry part basically comes into play, so that our listeners can understand that a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you so much. The first thing we do before we even start the nurseries, we need to be aware of type of trees and species which are performing much better at a certain point. I mean, at a certain place we need to plant. So all we do first is survey and a few research just to find out which are better tree species to be planted in such a place. And then once we have all this information, the first thing is to start the tree nurseries. Most of the nurseries are always started closer to the planting sites. Right now, we have more than 60 tree nurseries in different locations, and all these are having different tree species depending on the need of these sites. So once we have the tree nurseries starting, what follows is speaking and talking to the community. visiting these people, talking to them, and telling them what we think they can do with tree planting rather than doing what they do, which is harmful to the environment. So the trees normally stay at the tree nursery between 3 to 4 months before they are transplanted to the planting sites. But what we normally raise is 70% indigenous tree species. Most of the trees which are, originated from Tanzania, specifically in these places we are actually planting. And these includes some aquatic tree species like the figs. We have Ficus sa, Ficus toningi, or Ficus sycomoras. These are the best tree species to reserve moisture in some of the affected river parts, and also, some dams and lakes as well. But also we have the other portion, which is agroforestry. This makes only 30% of the trees we are planting. And this agroforestry portion includes trees from three categories. We have the nuts, fruits, and spices, because different people would prefer different trees in their farms. And also, even the macroclimates do not allow, do not accept the growth of all these at once. So in some of the mountainous areas, for example, Amani in the eastern Usambara, we always plant spice trees, which are normally clove or cinnamon. And once these people plant them, in a very short time, they would be harvesting and, sell just to get money, which they use to earn living. And fruits, this is the second category. Most of these are, we have the uh, mango, which is Mangifera indica. We have Citrus sinensis, which is orange. And we also have Persea americana. This is avocado. These do very well in most of the areas, just, around Korogwe and some around Handeni. And how do we make this? We grow them and graft or bud them. Grafting and budding, these are agroforestry techniques which help us to reduce the waiting time before the first production. So usually it would take 6 to 10 years for a normal mango tree to start bearing the first fruit. But by doing grafting, we assure that tree will start bearing its first fruit in just 24 months. So 2 years, then the fruits will be, accessed by the farmers. The third category is nuts. The most important nut we normally provide to the people is cashew nut, Anacardium occidentale. This does really well along the coast, and most of the farmer would also prefer planting that. We believe by including these stuffs in the agroforest, these people will first of all get enough food. So this will be a good solution uh, towards, resolving issues like hunger and malnutrition. But the excess from what they harvest from their farms is normally traded. They use that to sell. This will stimulate business ventures in the villages and rural communities. And so in the future, people will see no need to go in the forest to cut down the trees for timber, or engage in illegal lumbering, or maybe engage in illegal mining. Instead, they would be selling these organic, high selling products to earn money, to earn living, while they they get enough food for their, families and households. So normally the trees are in two groups. We have the 70%, which are pure native trees, which are to restore and stabilize biodiversity in the region, and the 30%, which includes the three categories I've just explained, which are normally agroforest. But it's not all people agree to the concept of agroforestry or forest garden. So before we distribute the trees, we first of all need to educate people, to tell them why is it important to include these, agroforestry trees in their areas. And people are used to produce cereals, especially maize, and due to climate change, the soils and lands are not in a friendly way to allow, super production as it used to be in the past. So this makes poverty at its extreme, and yet incubate problems like deforestation, soil erosion, and the stuffs. So the trees we are providing, we make sure that these are resilient to climate change, and they can exist regardless the harshness of the weathers, regardless how poor the soil is. At some point, we include also some uh, soil treatment lessons. We help them to understand how to revitalize the soils. I mean, in their land pieces they own, and this is through the same agroforest techniques, through planting trees like Grillsidia sepium. This is one of the uh, leguminous, larger trees which shed enough leaves to revitalize soils. They can improve the soil, and maybe in the future, apart from the trees, still the cereals and other underground crops may also pay them just from what we can, advise them to do. Or trees like Kajanus kajan. This is one of the very important selling bean type of, plant, but also it has that ecological importance of revitalizing soils. So that's how it works. We raise them into two groups, which is the agroforest, and which makes actually 30%, and the 70%, which is normally for the native or indigenous trees, which are aimed to restore trees which were already lost in the past due to these issues of extreme poverty and stuffs relating to how to earn living in the communities, especially rural areas.
Thank you so much for that explanation. I think, yeah, it's just really amazing to see how, on the one hand, you're restoring those forests which have been lost, and on the other hand, also facilitating a switch to regenerative agriculture, which means, of course, also moving away from monoculture farming and educating people around the benefits of including also trees, not just economically, but also ecologically, into basically existing agricultural practices. Because, of course, also including tree species in general into agriculture means that erosion, etc., will become less prone. It's very much better for the soil health, and also in the long run. Then, of course, once the fruit trees start producing fruits, they can actually make a better living out of that. So I think it's really amazing how this one topic of one tree planted is so much more in the background and has basically so many diverse and important effects. And yeah, thanks also for already talking about the local communities and the importance of basically raising awareness and educating. Could you maybe also speak about the people employed in the nurseries, and in general, what other benefits you see for local communities? Because I know, of course, you're also doing a lot in the realm of education and trying to combine basically tree planting with education and also women empowerment. So it would be great to understand, how you're doing that in practice.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, in the 60 tree nurseries, we are having 72 workers who are, are doing several activities, nursery activities, and 75 to 80% of these people are women, and women have been very better in these, nursery works. But apart from the employments that they get through these tree nursery works, like filling the polythene tubes or tending to the trees which are growing in the tree nurseries or watering, we normally set aside 0.0% of the tree planting fund to support different, social projects. We have been using that fund to help women who, uh, cannot, who are normally grouped and do not have alternative to make an income. We find some of the widows in the villages who are not able to take care of their families. So we sometimes use the same fund to help these people. But apart from that, the most important point with the 0.05% of each tree planting cost, we normally use that money to take children to school, especially children from these poor families who would not do anything with education if they could not have such sort of support. Right now, we have 50 children who were able to resume their secondary education, and they would not be able to do that without the percent I've just mentioned. And one of these children is called the Aisha, and yeah, she was about to become a housemaid in one of the cities, which is Arusha. Yeah, I'm sure it was Arusha. She was about to become a housemaid, and the reason why Aisha had to become a housemaid was because her parents could not pay for her advanced secondary school needs and fees. So, what an initiative did they do till the time when they gave up and they just decided that she has to become a housemaid? The only thing they could do was to sell their only remaining farm to one of their, to one of their neighbor. But again, that business could not be settled. The neighbor had no enough money to purchase the farm. So they lastly decided that Aisha has to go for being a housemaid, not going to school again. So once we heard about that, we decided to approach the family, talking to the daughter and talking to the parents. And when everybody agreed, we decided to take Aisha to school. She's now in Form 5, and we expect in 2 years she will be able to join university because she's one of the brightest, students. And yeah, we are proud of that. She's now in school, back in school, and she is doing really well. The other one I remember is Ali Salim. This one uh, used to live with his grandmother because his parents separated when he was they divorced when he was 12 years old. So he used to live with his grandfather, grandmother and grandfather, because her parents, his parents could not, settle and see how they could help him. So the only way for him to get some fund to pay for school fees and maybe other school items was for him to engage in farm works, and most of these are very hard works. I can tell from my experience. He was to uproot stumps. I think everyone knows about this. These are the tree remainings from the ground. So uprooting stumps, at least in 5 to 10 acres, for him to get that money he could use to take him for further studies. That was very hard because he's still a teenager. He's around 17 now, I think, and he could not do that. So we, of course, included him in the list, and he is now one of the high school students. We hope maybe next year he will also be able to join, uh, university, one of the local universities here in Tanzania. So we are doing the same with people we find with hardship, especially in achieving their careers, especially education. And most of it is for the girls who are exposed to these, outdated traditions like home economics or issues relating to early marriage and stuffs like those ones. So by just planting trees, you can see or imagine how we multiply the advantage into the social well-being of the communities, helping this future generation to achieve what they have to achieve in terms of education, prospects, and let's say entrepreneurial kind of skills and stuffs. Apart from that, we have been a sparkling development, a sparkling figure in our region, and we've been able to construct and renovate more than 4 classes in different villages, and these were classes for the schools in the villages. Apart from which, we have also been able to construct a village administrative office for the elders to sit and decide for the development of their, of their villages. Lastly, what I remember, we also helped the availability of electricity in one of the sub villages in Amani, and this is Nelusanga. It's one of the places where we are actually planting. So we made sure that the fund that uh, we get aside goes straight to these people and help them to provide some social and economic impact. So this is just a few of what we have been doing with the people, with the communities around the planting sites, actually.
Super. Yeah, I mean, I also still remember when I was there, all those stories also from the nurseries, where basically every woman working there had her own story of why this work is super crucial and really giving some other level of independence. So, and also, of course, those school projects where you could see children actually growing up with, taking care of their own little tree nurseries, and also like early on being taught this idea or this importance of like nature conservation and basically climate change. So really, I love what you're doing, how you are basically going ahead in this work. Maybe to come to the challenges, because of course, I mean, the last year also in Tanzania has been really, tough in terms of rain. What are the challenges you are seeing or encountering while doing this work in the Usambara Mountains, both maybe ecologically but also socially, and how are you reacting to this? How are you, for example, reacting to this general notion of climate change, which is of course also affecting the Usambara Mountains? Would be great if you could elaborate a bit on that.
Thank you. One of the key challenges we have been facing in most of the areas is climate change. And in Tanzania, this can easily be witnessed with the extended extreme drought in most of the areas. While most of the water sources are drying up and the land is very dry, so people cannot harvest enough. But again, we can't plant so many trees as well. So what we basically do with this challenge of drought, which is a result of global climate change, um, is trying, first of all, to research the best species which can adapt to the changes. And once we find them, these are what we insist people to plant in their farms. And this goes with certain crops which would, easily adapt you to the changes. And once these are planted, it's like we are a step ahead, yeah, towards finding a proper solution. The other thing can be financial resources and sometimes technology. These are sometimes acute problems once it comes to data collection in the field. We need to have proper technology that would be easy for us, let's say, to monitor our work in the ground. But also we need some finance to pay more experts who would help us to extend the job in many places. So how do we go about the finance case and the technology issue? We are, of course, working with some of the education institutions in Tanzania to see how they can also intervene in the matter by, maybe deploying some of their forest experts or agricultural experts from different departments, just to see if we can develop a good mode that will technologically be affordable and economically be affordable, and yet cope to the changes which we experience, just to help these people in the ground.
Super, yeah, because you already spoke about monitoring, like using the proper, also technological resources needed to evaluate the success of the projects. Could you maybe elaborate a bit on how you make sure that those projects are actually, sustainable in the long run? I mean, you already talked about choosing the right tree species when it comes to, expecting climate change, or already now during climate change adaptation. But if you could maybe speak a little bit more about how you evaluate basically the project in the long run.
Oh, thank you. We normally pay some visits to the planting sites. We visit the farmers as well. And we have these foresters from our office who normally are scheduled to make that rotation. So that helps us to, at the end of the year, helps us to really be aware of how much is surviving and how much we might have been lost. I mean, we might have lost in the field or in the farms. That helps us to as well decide how or when we can replace all the lost trees. But apart from that, we also have been in use of some of the softwares just to track the trees which are growing in the field. And yeah, as I said, before we start planting trees in these areas, first of all, we need to speak and make some agreements with these societies or communities which are living around. So we normally arrive to legal agreements whereby every part agrees to take care of the trees to their maturity. And remember, in Tanzania, most of the land, or the land in general, is owned by the government. So the agreement is between we planters and the authorities. So once we sign the agreement, it's like the trees are safer for their future till their lifetime. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe also maybe for anyone interested, we of course as Impact Euro also have our own basically tree planting methodology in which we explain very well how we also collaborate with project partners to make sure that the projects are monitored in a proper way. And also, if you're interested, all the sites that we are reforesting with Khalifa and with Forest Focus in Tanzania are also all uploaded on Restore. It's an online platform where you can basically see the map area, the polygons so-called, and also the information in terms of when it was planted, see images. And that of course also allows us to communicate the great work that you are doing in the ground to basically the companies or private people that are collaborating with us. So it's really an approach where we try to make that visible, and of course also using drone images and satellite imagery to really see how the sites are performing, besides of course the checks on the ground and the replacement of like any trees that did not survive the first year and the second, etc. So thanks a lot for this elaboration. Maybe we could now, after speaking so much about basically how it all goes in Tanzania, on your view on basically Germany, or basically the work that we are doing, because of course it's super interesting to get your perspective in terms of your responsibility in Tanzania. You're really taking action, you're really trying to engage local communities and make a difference. But what is your view on actually our role in a sense in Europe, and our responsibility for facilitating action on the SDGs versus your role in Tanzania? How do you see this partnership, and how do you see responsibility, and also maybe the perception of the people in your communities? What do they think of us as a sponsors, or like me as a German coming into Tanzania and looking at how everything's working? What is your perception on this like German Tanzanian relationship and responsibility in a sense?
Okay. Thank you. I should maybe get that from the angle of global climate change. And yeah, in my opinion, Tanzania itself has some steps to do to as a role in the general concept of climate change and the perception of the relationship between maybe Europe or German or you guys, Impact Hero, and the communities down here. So I would say, in my opinion, that we as Tanzanians need to to adapt to what we call sustainable development practices, and this can easily be by investing into clean energy and sustainable agriculture. And this is generally due to lower our simple resources that we have been having. And yeah, for the case of how I perceive you guys, or we perceive you guys, and your contribution in the general concept can be maybe doing something that would help the global north, or German, or specifically any country from Europe, understand that it's much more important to reduce the emission impact and see if they can support the global efforts once it comes to sustainability and global climate change adaptation. And yeah, specifically Tanzania, once that is done, supporting the effort, I think everything will be in in an amazing stage.
Okay. So you're basically saying that you as Tanzania also have some responsibility to adapt to, more sustainable practices, but in general, also kind of calling out Europe and the global North to contribute and to be a main sponsor. What you also said in terms of basically financing, that what you are lacking often is basically the financial resources to scale these projects, to adapt more. And in that sense, of course, a call to everyone in Germany and Europe to really step in and enable you to do this collective action that you are right now sponsoring in the ground.
Perfect.
What kind of maybe as a last question, then we can also see if there are some in the chat in the community.
Yeah,
I don't see any so far, but if there are some, please feel free to also ask your own questions to Khalifa.
yeah.
What has the development been that you've been seeing since you started Forest Focus basically some time ago? Have you already seen some positive changes? And what is basically your wish for the next 10 years? Do you have a vision for the Usambara Mountains?
Yeah, sure. We have achieved a lot. One of it is planting a good number of trees. More than 1 million trees are now growing in the field. They survived and they are doing really, really well. But the most important thing is the communities are now changing. People have been very cooperative in protecting the existing forest and the water sources now. And this is due to what we have been doing with these people in the villages, educating them. They have been very good ambassadors. But the good news is we now have some fruit which are produced by the trees we started planting in last 3 years in most of the farms. So people are very positive to the tree planting project and concept in general, and they are very happy to start having these fruits. In the future, um, a good community with clean ways to earn living. I see a community without conflicts. In some points, we have been having some conflicts in different communities, people fighting over resources, trying to earn, living. But this has been declining as days, pass by because people are now concentrating to their farms, are trying to plant trees, which are fruity trees, and they they have a positive hope for their future as well. So in 10 years, I'm sure we will not have this problem of deforestation in most of the eastern and western Usambara. And with the trees, I hope the economies in the villages will also be uplifted and people will be free of hunger as well, with plenty of nuts, spices, and fruits which will be produced in their homes and lands.
Super, thank you. And I think with this one, of course, you're also pointing to a very important topic that's also very dear to us, or which, I can't emphasize enough. It's really this, bottom-up approach where it's about you knowing what kind of also cultural conflicts are basically present in your own region, and you really sparking this sense of togetherness and of a common vision that's worth pursuing, and not, us kind of, as it has been done for a long time, kind of development cooperation or like development aid, where people come in, implement a project which they think is good, and do not really even know what are the actual problems in the region. So I think it's very great that you also from this village, being born and raised there, are taking action to change things. And it's been super interesting to hear how those things are developing in practice. And of course, I really hope that we as Impact Hero can also really for the future equip you with the resources needed to uphold these great projects and to also reach this vision that you just mentioned, which is a super important one, and not just for the Usambara Mountains, but for the whole world, because those heritage areas, as they are, I mean, I was able to visit them, they are declining, and they are just so worthwhile conserving, and such a rich area in which people are also living and having this connection of nature, which of course should always be preserved.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
thanks a lot for all of the elaborative answers. And maybe in as a last personal closing question, what would you say is the one word the world needs right now, and why?
Yeah, compassion. I would say we need compassion. Yeah, we need to understand people, we need to have empathy, and we need to be kind to all people. This is much better for the wild unit, the unit of different communities in the world. So I would say compassion as a source of unit in all the wealthy communities.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this, compassionate and very, very kind conversation, which I think is so important. It's really, really great to have you as a partner, really, and that's how we also try to work, like as a very collaborative approach, where we together listen to one another and can find common solutions, and in that sense, drive action, drive collective action for the Sustainable Development Goals. So, thanks a lot, Khalifa. Thanks a lot to everyone listening. I hope you got some insights into how tree planting, reforestation, agroforestry is working in Tanzania, what challenges are, and what impact can be created if we manage to scale this action in countries like Tanzania with partners like Khalifa. We are super grateful for everyone who listened and for everyone, of course, who is supporting us and with supporting us, supporting Khalifa and the great action done in Tanzania. And we are very much looking forward to giving you more updates also in the next rainy season, which will be upcoming in November and December, the small rainy season, of course, from the ground. So stay tuned, and thanks a lot for listening. Thanks again, Khalifa, and wishing you all a wonderful
Pleasure.
rest of the day.
Thank you.